Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Silverstone PS07, but the white edition. Silverstone even sent me an email saying, we know you love white cases, so would you like to take a look at this? And I've said yes. Now this is, there's quite a few things that we kind of need to cover with it, because it's similar to one of their other cases that they do. It's available in the UK for around the kind of £80 mark. One of the retailers is 80 quid with posting, and the other one's nearly 90 quid posting, but the other one's a bit of a rip-off merchant anyway. So we'll go with it's available for kind of 75 to 80 quid. So we're quite happy with that. It's an M80X case as well. But like I said, what I want to do is we'll get all these bits covered. So what I'm going to do is bring you in as ever. I'm going to start to have a good look around the case and have a look at all the features. Right then, so for starters, we'll take a look at the front and around the front. Now, as you can see at the front, it's actually quite a plain look here. Now, one of the things I said before is it's very similar to one of the other cases that they do, and that's the TJ08, which is another M80X case, pretty much based on the same kind of chassis idea. It's exactly the same size. Really only the front's any different, and that's got a large kind of mesh area here. Some people like that, some people don't. It's obviously easy to see dust with that. This has actually got quite a plain look to it. Now down the sides we can see that we've got a large kind of the vented area here, and exactly the same on the other side. Now the reason for that is because there's a door here. And if you open it up, you can see that it exposes then the 220mm fans in the front. Now those 220mm fans do have a dust filter, and it's kind of meshed as well, which is also another good idea, because then that allows, there's a larger surface area then for it to allow the air in. That's a little bit more complicated than it really needs to be as far as an explanation is concerned, but it's more so that you can get it on and off easy. And you can obviously see the two golf ball style fans, or whatever you want to call it, white fans in the front, both 120mm. It's quite easy to put the dust filter back on when you can actually see where you're trying to put it. And you can just push the two dust filters back on like that, and you've got the, like I said, the large mesh area in the sides, and there's also some cutouts in the front. So that's how the air's getting into the front of the case. Now, also on the front of the case, we've got a power button there and a reset button. It's actually quite nice looking, because I would want to bring you in, but I don't want to keep moving the camera backwards and forwards all the time. Basically, you've got the top of the button is white, but then round the outside of the button, it's got like a chrome look to it. In fact, no, I'm going to try and zoom you in so that you can see. We may have to jig the cameras about a bit. Yeah, Sonic will do it. Right. You can see round the outside of the button there, you've got like a chrome look to it. Real nice small bit of detailing. Right, we'll put the camera back. Righty, highty, I shall sit back down again. Now, also on the front we have two USB 3s. There is an internal header for that as well on the inside. We'll show you that in a bit. Then we've obviously got microphone and headphone ports. Two optical bays at the top, and if we move around, you can see there's two buttons on the side, and that's how you release the optical bays. Now, one thing I will say, when you release them, you still have to kind of get your finger there to give them a bit of a tug, and there is a notch out so you can get your finger in, but when you go to put them back in, they go in quite easily. But one thing I can say is, especially on the side where the clips are, as in where the button is, you do kind of have to prise them in a bit, as in push the little plastic clips into place. And again, you can see that I've put it in a bit too far on that side. I'm making it look a lot more difficult than it is, because I'm trying to do it with kind of from one side. But the point I was trying to get is, when you pull the clips out on this side, there's two plastic clips on the outside, and you do generally have to kind of just push them in a little bit so it slides in. It's not something you can just smash, because you'll break the clips off. It's not anything to mark it down for quality wise or anything like that. It's just a point that I'm trying to bring up for you, so that if you do buy it, when you get it and you start taking these off, you don't start, you know, whacking away at it. Also down the sides, this is actually metal, feels like aluminium, and what it is you've got some powder coated alley, and then the tops of it, where the lines are, is bare metal, so you've got that kind of that stripe look to kind of match the side of the buttons, and it actually looks really, really nice. Now I'm going to no, I'm not going to redo the camera, we'll just do it the old fashioned way. Right, so the old fashioned way, in the top, this is where the power supply is actually, and you can see with the power supply we've actually got the fan pointed up with this one, so it's bringing the air in from outside. Now the dust filter for the power supply is magnetic. People may remember there was a case that I did once where I didn't like the magnetic clip on the roof that went over the top. That was when I was comparing it to something else though, and it really did feel cheap. The magnets on this are pretty strong, but also you can see that there's a recess around here. You've obviously got the vented area, then there's a recess, so when the filter goes inside, it's not that easy actually. You do have to give it a good pull to get it to go, but if you were to just knock it, running your hands over it, it's really not that easy to get it to move. Real easy when you do want to remove it to clean. You just really need to give it either a good tug. But yeah, it's one of those things, but it does sit there. It does make it feel a lot more quality than that other case that we did in the past. Now, moving on to the side panel. What I'm going to do actually, we're going to do we'll do the back side first, because this side is the back of the motherboard tray, but we'll move around to the back of the case. Now, power supply in the roof, obviously. There are double mounts for your power supply as well, so you can turn it either way around. Most power supplies now have got both the screw mounts on them anyway. It's MATX, so we've got 4 expansion slots in the back. Then it's just a normal layout, 120mm fan. To get the screws for the expansion slots, you do have to remove this little section here. And you can see that you've got a couple of vented areas, but nothing really major. Now I'm just going to remove all of the side panel screws while we're back here, so I don't have to do it when we're trying to do the other parts of the case. One thing that I will say about the side panel screws though, when I take the last one off, is there are plastic washers on the end. Might not sound like a massive thing, but it's just another thing that when it does up, it's not going to end up scratching up the back of your case or anything. So it's just a tiny little kind of mark of quality there that they've actually thought about stuff. So removing the rear side panel, we take that off. There is a fair bit of room back here actually. You've got a good 20mm of room between the outside of the door and the back of the motherboard tray. You will have to be fairly selective with your cable routing. There are 2 cable routing holes here and here, as you can see, and there are plenty of if I move this out of the way, there are plenty of anchors for you to put zip clips through, so that you can tie your cables right down. One thing I do want to draw your attention to, just quickly, and I will just make sure I get it right on the camera, is right at the bottom there. You can see that there is a SATA cable and a SATA power. Just want to draw your attention to that, because when we talk inside in a minute about an SSD, you can see at the back where it is. It's right on the very bottom of the case and right out the way. So yeah, just want to draw your attention to that first. So back of the case, there's loads of room back there for cables really. If you were running a non-modular power supply, you may find things a little bit difficult. Also, another thing I want to draw your attention to is there's a couple of screws here. Can't see in the camera. A couple of screws here. Take the other side panel off. 2 more screws here, and there's actually a couple on the front as well. when you want to fit the power supply, you do have to remove the roof because it gets dropped in from above because there's some latches here underneath. So when you first build it, please remember that you do have to take the roof off to put your power supply in. You'll find it so much easier, to the point you probably won't get it in otherwise. The power supply we're actually using is a Silverstone Strider plus 500 watt. They sent it to me with the case. It's quite a small little modular power supply, so we've got that in there. But the reason why they sent it to me is because they also do some shorter cables to go with it. It's a PP05 cable kit, so it's a modular cable kit. But like I said, they're actually shorter. Now if I have a look up in the roof, I'm pretty sure that it's a fully modular power supply as well. And yeah, so we've got shortened cables for that, and it actually makes the whole rig a lot tidier. Now 500 watts is a lot of wattage for a power supply, especially if you run an M80X. Unless you're going to make a monster gaming rig in there, 500 watt would probably do you plenty. But anyway, right, so rig we have inside, as I've told you, we've got, if I point it up this way, we have the Silverstone power supply in the top. We've got an M80X casing, M80X motherboard in there, which is an Asus AM1, sorry. Oh, I really am having a complete brain fart today. It's an Asus M80X Llano rig. I know you'll all tell me the socket in a minute. I'm just literally having a blonde moment. Anyway, so we've got Llano in there. Heatsink, CPU heatsink, you can see is a Noctua NHD14, and you can fit that in there perfectly fine. But the thing is it's quite a large heatsink. It does obviously fit in the back. That's all well and good. But we've got this. You've got the hard drive mount at the very front of the case, which you can fit 1, 2, 3 hard drives in. If you run a big CPU heatsink like this, once you've put your mechanical hard drive in there, you're not going to be able to fit the heatsink, which is kind of a bit of a pain in the bottom. But that's only if you run an enormous heatsink like this. Now, if I just quickly in front of you remove the hard drive cage, that opens the whole area out, and you can see inside you've got kind of rubber matting in the side, or foam in the side of the hard drive cage to keep noise down. So that's all well and good. Now this plastic bit at the top, there is actually a bit of rubber that you can fit on this if you run an enormous graphics card, and it kind of acts as a support, which is quite good if you end up using it as a LAN case. But for me, if I was running it as a LAN case, I'd probably end up wanting a decent size heatsink on it, so this would be probably one of the first things that I'd be removing anyway, unless you're running it as like a server case or something. Now, as I said to you before, I spoke to you about the solid state drive in the floor. Now if we have a look, we can see in the bottom, you can see we've got 4 screws here. The ones on the outside are for the bottom of the hard drive cage mount. The other 4 are for a solid state drive that I've got mounted in there, and you've got the solid state mount in the deck there. So if you were to run an enormous heatsink like this and you wanted to keep this area open so you can get plenty of air to your graphics card and plenty of air to your CPU heatsink, you've still got a decent mount there for an SSD to go in the floor. You can then get another SSD in an adapter plate. Yes, there does appear to be someone mowing grass outside my house. You can get another adapter plate in there, so you could get 2 solid state drives underneath this bracket should you wish. Now we've got the 120 fan in the back, obviously exhausting, and we've obviously got the 220mm in the front, so there's a fair bit of airflow there. And now we've got this open, there's a fair bit of room here as well. So in a bit, what I'm going to do is I'll remove the bottom cage, and I'll mock up some radiators in here for you as well, just so that you can have a look for the different, for the sizing and stuff for your radiators. If you did want to sort of make a really kind of pocket-powered water-cooled system. Now, I'm just going to rejig the camera just so that I can show you, because I always end up talking to people about using optical bays for hard drive cages. And as you can see, what I've got, I do need to just bring him in a little bit more. There we go. You can see that with some brackets that came with the case, I fitted a 3.5-inch normal mechanical hard drive into the optical bay at the top. So if you did want a storage drive, you can still put one of those up there, and you can see it's all just kind of just bolted in there, tucked up out the way. That would probably be the way I would go with it. I would probably end up going with like an aftermarket optical bay mount, which had some rubber or something on it, just to keep the vibrations down. But that is something that I say a lot about in my videos, is about getting, if you do need to wang some storage in, that's a really easy way of doing it. So there's that. Now I'm going to stop the video quickly, just so that I can whiz the solid state drive out of the bottom of the case, and I'll get some radiators in there so I can mock up those for you. Right then, so just moving on to just cover water cooling quickly. I know it's something that I seem to cover in every video, but it's something that if I don't do it, people end up asking anyway. So I just do it. Now, radiator. This is a mock-up radiator that I've got. It's an XSPC RX240. It's a 60mm thick radiator. This is what I call a normal radiator, me personally anyway. The 30mm ones I call skinnies, and then the 45s are just kind of like mediums, whatever you want to call them. But anyway, right, so trying to get it in. We can get it in, and also looking, it's going to be pretty tight with this one to get it lined up with your fans, but you could just about do it, as long as you don't drag the case down the wall like I just have. You could just about get it in there. What you need to kind of notice though is the end tank has gone up into the optical bay, so we've lost this top optical bay. Now if you end up with a solid state drive in here, in the floor, you won't be able to fit the radiator, because the radiator is now properly, touching right at the very bottom of the floor. We've lost the top optical bay as well, so you'd end up having to stick the solid state drive like on the back side of your radiator or something like that. Also, something to consider is if you've lost the optical bay here because the radiator's gone up into it, we've got a mechanical hard drive up in this. It would be very difficult for you to be able to like run a dual bay res or something. Well, you wouldn't be able to. You'd have to lose the top and get a single bay reservoir or something like that, and then you'd be very close to your power supply, and I mean very close to your power supply as well. So you'd have to get quite creative with the way you wanted to run your pump. You could do it at the top, but like I said, it'd be very tight. You'd end up having to run 90-degree fittings maybe. You really would have to spend some time thinking about it. Can be done, not saying it can't be, but it's not going to be something for a beginner where you just want to kind of just throw your bits in. This is definitely, if you want to water cool this is something for something for someone that's done it before, or at least knows what to expect, or isn't expecting to get it done in like just buying your bits and hoping to be lucky. It's definitely something that you're either going to need to think about or be willing to put a little bit of time in once you get your parts in to make sure you get it right. So it definitely can be done, easily can be done as well. And with a radiator like this in the front, you can easily cool your CPU. I'm not a big fan of running any more than a CPU on a 240. My Nürburgring is run on one of these exact radiators, and there's no way in hell I would want to put any more than just a CPU on it. Alright, I'm running a 2700K at 5 gig, but yeah, for me it's kind of one or the other, unless you're running like an i3 or something like that. But anyway, because don't forget, we want for water cooling, we just want ridiculously low temperatures, but also low noise as well. I don't see the point in having turbo fans on something and making it noisier than it would have been with an air cooler. But anyway, going off topic, with the radiator in there, we've still got a good I'd say 25. I'd still say we've got a good 30-35mm of room between the edge of the radiator and the start of your SATA connectors and stuff like that, so you're easily going to be able to get your SATA connectors in, and you'll probably be able to get most graphics cards still in there as well, but it will start to get a little bit tight. You'll easily be able to get like a 680 in here and still have enough room, so you could end up getting ample power in Also, another thing to kind of consider as well is because when we've got a big heatsink here, there's a fair old gap. We're talking sort of 50 mil, I reckon, between the tops of the PCI brackets and then the outside of the case. So even with a graphics card in here, you're still going to have enough room to be able to get your hoses in and around here as well. Also something to consider, which I've just thought about, is if we've not got a massive heatsink in here like this, you could probably easily get your pump mounted on the floor of the case and be able to do it that way. Little pump, you've got the ceramic reservoir, the ceramic pumps that you can get from Alpha Cool. You can get little reservoir tops for those. You can get one of those in the floor, or a DDC. XSPC still do their pumps and reservoirs combined, not for the optical bays, but you know, separate. Easily get one of those in the floor and be able to do your loop that way. So then you could still run your AV stuff in your optical bays at the top. So that might be a good way forward as well. Anyway, as far as water cooling in this case is concerned, think about your parts. It's what you should do with every case, really. Really have a look at the options that you've got and kind of envisage where you'd want it in the case. I keep seeing cases pop up lately where the hosing's terrible. You got bloody, big lengths of hose, and not necessarily even really thought about hiding it. But it's got to be tidy. And just remember, loop order doesn't matter. And by that I mean you don't need to go radiator block, if you've got a bigger case, radiator block, just get it all in there super tidy. It doesn't matter where the rads are in the system or anything. The only thing that you need to remember is to go reservoir, pump, and then from that point onwards, it doesn't matter how you go about it. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is stop holding the case up because it is ready to fall over. There we go, fall over, and taking a nice big gouge out of my wall. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to pick the case up and we're going to get ready for a conclusion. Right then peeps, moving on to the conclusion, and we'll start with the award and then we'll kind of go in and explain it a little bit more. Right, so PS07 Gold Award, and it's pretty basic really. Because I gave the TJ08 the Gold Award, and it's essentially the exact same case. The only real difference is the front panel and the actual front part of the case. The TJ08 has got a 180mm fan in the front. The PS07 has got the 220mm fans in the front, and a slightly different design to the front of the case. I do prefer the front look of this case very much. Now, 120mm fans versus 180mm fans. Obviously the 180mm fan can be quieter, and the only thing that we've really lost is that with the 180 you did have a fan control on the side. With these we don't. 120s are obviously going to be easier to customise. If you wanted to go all white like this, then you're not really going to have a problem. But if you wanted to swap them out for LED fans, maybe Noctua fans, if you're going to go water cooling, if you were going to run a H100, then you could mount the H100 radiator in the front and have that stretched across. So you've got a lot more customising options with the 120 fan option. It's obviously dust filtered. You've still got the front panel there, so you can easily get to it. There's ample ventage in the sides for the airflow for the case. Water cooling on this is pretty good as well. One thing I hadn't covered when I did the TJ08 was the fact that we've obviously got 180mm rads now available. When I did that case, they hadn't been released yet. So you can get a 180 fan for the front of the TJ08, but obviously with 120mm fans, you've got a lot more radiator options rather than just the one with the TJ08. With this, you've got a lot more radiator options. Obviously get a H100 in the front if you want. You can get the 60mm fan, 60mm thick radiators like the RX or the Phobias and the Alpha Core, all coppers. There's so many options there. The only place really, if you're going to go with water cooling, that you need to go careful, as I explained, it's with your pump. You're going to need to choose that very carefully. You could get one with a single, and don't forget I'm saying this out loud, single optical bay drive, because you'll never get it with a double because the radiator will be up in there. But then you're going to end up with, you have to use 90-degree fittings to get the hoses down. And it could end up getting expensive with all the kind of different connectors and stuff that you're going to need to be able to run it. But if you get one of the ones that you can put in the floor, I think you'll be much better off with that. You're obviously not going to need a massive amount of flow with just a single loop, because I really wouldn't be wanting to put any more than just the CPU on this with a single radiator in here. But it is doable. But like I said, just be careful, think your stuff through. Don't just buy whatever you can get your hands on and make do. Make sure you put a little bit of thought into it, take a little bit more time, you'll end up with a much better product, or a much better project, I should say. Air cooling wise, obviously you can get an NHD14 in here, which is still my choice of air coolers. I've not found an air cooler that's properly beaten this yet, and I really am a fan. The NZXT Havoc 140, you could get that in here easily as well, because it's actually, if anything, it's a bit smaller than the D14. Graphics cards wise, 670, 580, 7970 won't be a problem. 590 and 690 may be a little bit of an issue, where it's a little bit longer. If you're going to start running water cooling, I wouldn't go down that road if you're going to go water cooling. If you're running the hard drive cage and stuff, not going to be too much of a problem, because it will just kind of rest on the top. So yeah, graphics card wise, you're not really going to have too much of a problem. Don't forget, with your power supply, you're going to need to think about kind of your cables. I wouldn't want to be running this case with a non-modular power supply. Also, when you kind of go to cable it up, if you don't need a cable in there, don't use it. I'm very much a fan, especially when I'm trying to go stupidly anally tidy, of not necessarily running. I don't run a cable unless I absolutely definitely need it. If I only need one SATA power cable, say for example for one hard drive, then I don't see the point in putting a SATA cable in there with 4 or 6 connectors on it, and that's more stuff that I've got to hide. I'll end up just having a Molex in there, which obviously I'll be running fans off of, and then running a Molex to SATA extension and just doing it that way, just to make sure it's super tidy and it just keeps all the cables down. If the cable's not in there, you've not got to hide it, it's going to end up looking tidier. Go back and look at my old Fractal R3 rigs that I did, and you can see how tidy you can get stuff if you start thinking about things ahead of time. Like I said, you can get optical bays. You can get hard drives up in the optical bays if you want, and that would probably be the way I would go if you want to keep this open. You can easily get as far as storage is concerned, a 2 or a 3 terabyte drive in the top. You're not going to need any more than that. And then a solid state drive in the bottom. Bosh, you're done. Absolutely laughing. If you end up going down the water cooling route, then you can just double-sided tape the solid state drive to the back of the radiator. Of course, this is more of a guide than a review, isn't it? But anyway, I really like the case. That's why I give it a gold award. I gave the TJ08 a gold. This is just a slight fan change in the front and a colour change. Obviously, I'm going to like it because it's white. But yeah, I really do like the case, and you could make yourself an amazing little rig. This really, for me, front room, yeah, but maybe a really smart bedroom where you don't want a massive rig or something like that. A LAN rig, it would make an amazing LAN rig, but I'd almost think it'd be a shame to get this battered. Like I said, I think this for a really tidy kind of smart office or bedroom or something like that, where you just want something not necessarily low power, but something that's a slightly more minimalist, but you can still pack a lot inside, and there are a lot of options with this. Now obviously we've done the Prodigy recently, where this is M80X. We've still got water cooling options, which is something I wanted to cover, but obviously where it is M80X opens you up to a lot more options with motherboards. You can get 2011 M80X motherboards. Obviously you can get Z77 M80X motherboards. Absolute doddle. You can get a double length graphics card in there, still get a sound card in there as well. As far as people going about TV capture cards and stuff like that, I mean, Christ, how old are you now? TV capture cards, you can get that all through the internet, son. But you can get a decent length graphics card in there, still get a decent sound card in there as well if you want. If you're mad enough, and you would need to be mad as well, you can go SLI, Crossfire, but then the cards are going to be sandwiched right on top of each other, so things are going to get noisy, so I wouldn't personally go down that route. But yeah, you can definitely get yourself a really tasty graphics card in here, and then a nice sound card as well, so you've got some proper audio coming out. Water cooling, so you're going to have some nice cool temperatures. There's going to be room in here so you can get some storage in there as well. What more could you want to cram inside a little case like this? I don't think you could want to. So yes, a thoroughly well-deserved gold award. Thank you very much, Silverstone. Don't forget, if you end up buying the, or if you did want to go down the Strider power supply route, it is 100% modular. If you did get this, you can get the shorter cable, so you can keep your rig slightly tidier as well. Cables wise, because you're going to ask me in the comments, I'll say, right, the model number for the power supply is SST-ST50F-P. But yeah, it's the Strider Plus 500 watt. But you want PP05 for the shorter cable kit. Tiny little box like that, but obviously if you've not got massively long cables, you're going to have less stuff to hide. It's going to be tidier. So yes, that's Tiny Tom Logan with another video for you. Out.